your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us this Saturday, September the 6th. Members of the Hollow Water First Nation in Manitoba are in a state of shock after a mass stabbing. 2 people are dead and 8 others were wounded in 2 separate attacks Thursday morning in the community about 200 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. RCMP say one of the dead is an 18-year-old female and the attacker was her brother.
We can confirm, sadly, that an 18-year-old female has died as a result of these injuries. Following the stabbings, the suspect, who was Tyrone Simard, who was a 26-year-old male from the community of Hollow Water, fled the community in a stolen vehicle and fled south towards the community of Black River. The vehicle was located by the RCMP near Black River First Nation, traveling south on PR Highway 304. It was at this time, when the vehicle was located at approximately 6:53 a.m., that the suspect collided with the RCMP cruiser that was driving northbound towards the scene to respond. The suspect, Tyrone, succumbed to his injuries on scene.
The families were very close to me. And my deepest condolences to the family right now. So I'll pray as hard as I could.
The attack comes 3 years to the day after a mass stabbing on the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, which left 11 people dead and 17 injured. Federal Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says adjustments are coming to the public service as Ottawa looks to trim its spending in the fall budget. Champagne and other cabinet ministers huddled in Toronto for days of meetings with Prime Minister Mark Carney, preparing for the fall session of Parliament in less than 2 weeks. Repeating what the Prime Minister stated earlier in the week, Champagne says the current level of spending is not sustainable.
Folks at home have been tightening their belt for quite some time. They said, if I do it, the government has to do it as well. So having a leaner and more efficient government to provide services to Canadians, that is needed as you're looking to rebuild this nation for the 21st century. Well, you will find adjustments because you have to take it, when you look at these things, you have to look at the trend. We've been adding a lot of people over the last few years, during the COVID period. So you're looking at adjusting. But at the same time, the point is really about using technology, delivering better services, making sure that Canadians find value for money. And it's about time that we are straight with Canadians. Canadians understand that. I want to be straight with Canadians. Prime Minister was straight yesterday. Tough choices ahead, but ambition when it comes to investment, rigor when it comes to spending.
Canadians will have to wait for the fall budget next month to see where those cuts will land. And speaking of budgets, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre can't wait to see one. He says while Carney talks about cutting spending, he's actually doing the opposite.
So far, we've got from Mark Carney is radically higher spending. He's not only increasing spending over Trudeau's numbers, he's increasing it at an increasing rate. Remember, Justin Trudeau had pledged a deficit of about $42 billion for this fiscal year. Mark Carney, without even introducing a budget, might be as much as 100% above that. So nobody should be talking about Mark Carney's austerity. Everyone should be talking about his hypocrisy. He's doing exactly the opposite of what he said he would do.
Former Quebec Premier Jean Charest says Canada will eventually thank U.S. President Donald Trump for giving the country a much-needed economic shakeup. He told business leaders in Quebec City that Trump is pulling Canada out of its, quote, lethargy and forcing its leaders to rethink the economy. Charest is currently a member of Prime Minister Mark Carney's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. He suggested the country under Carney's leadership will accelerate big projects, rethink federalism, and redefine the country's role in the world. The federal NDP's leadership race is underway, with the party releasing its rules for the race. Leadership candidates will have to raise $100,000 and get 500 signatures from members. However, the party is stipulating that at least 50% of the total required signatures must be from members who do not identify as a cis man, meaning a male whose reported gender corresponds to their reported sex at birth. Additionally, a minimum of 100 signatures must be from members of equity-seeking groups such as LGBTQ or racialized individuals. The date of the contest has not been set, but the winner will be announced on March 29th at the NDP National Convention. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants the Liberal government to scrap the temporary foreign worker program. Poilievre also wants them to stop issuing visas under the program. He made the comments Wednesday in Mississauga, Ontario.
The workers themselves, they are not bad people. They are not the problem. They are being taken advantage of by liberal corporate elites who want to use them to drive down wages. And of course, we continue to support the dream of all immigrants to Canada, immigrants who come here to be Canadian, to get a job, work hard, contribute, and live a good life. That is part of the Canadian promise, and that is not what we're addressing here today. We're addressing a program that temporarily brings people from low-wage countries to replace Canadians and drive down the wages of our people. That's why Conservatives are calling on the Carney government to permanently scrap the temporary foreign worker program and to stop issuing visas for any new temporary foreign workers coming into the country. Under this proposal, existing permits would be wound down until the program is entirely eliminated.
Poilievre claims that specific fast food chains are hiring foreigners over locals, including through job postings that call specifically for temporary foreign workers. He also accused the government of creating conditions that frustrate the efforts of young people to start their working lives. And speaking of newcomers to Canada, immigration was one of the topics of discussion as the Alberta Next panel met with a crowd of about 400 people Wednesday night in Medicine Hat. The panel is looking for input on how to shape its relationship with Ottawa moving forward. But when the discussion moved to Alberta's proposal to take greater control over immigration by restricting some newcomers' access to social services, that brought some strong opinions from some audience members.
People don't immigrate to Alberta, they immigrate to Canada. They go in Canada to places where they can find jobs, social services, education, and their own communities, speaking their own language and supporting their own culture. That's why we have immigrants in Alberta.
The federal government has done, I'm going to suggest, a very poor job in the immigration system. And the gentleman that was talking earlier about a crisis being the opportunity, well, it may well be on hand, and I can see perhaps a lot of pushback from other provinces wanting to make some changes over the system that would benefit them as well.
The panel will travel to Lethbridge for another town hall next week. That will be followed by stops in Airdrie, Grand Prairie, and Calgary to wrap up the panel stops before the end of September. The Law Society of Alberta has disbarred John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, for what it claims is a serious breach of professional ethics. The decision is tied to Carpe's decision to hire a private investigator to survey a Manitoba judge during the time of the COVID-19 restrictions. Carpe called the disbarment decision a vindictive abuse of process, and he is considering appealing the ruling. Carpe admits he made an error in judgment by hiring the private investigator, but says it was done to illuminate a legitimate public policy question. Were politicians and judges complying with the stringent COVID restrictions that they themselves had imposed on the public? Carpe will remain on as president of the JCCF in their efforts to defend constitutional freedoms for Canadians. A story coming out of Ontario where a homeowner defended himself against an armed intruder and is now facing criminal charges has Canadians wondering if they themselves can defend their homes against such an attack without prosecution. Kara Lebenson, a criminal defense lawyer, shed some light on Canada's self-defense law with BCN's Paul Arthur.
Did the homeowner have the right to use a knife to defend himself? And if so, a reasonable force, right, if that's the standard to the degree of self-defense, how do we define what that is and what isn't reasonable force?
It's a big question. And because this individual whose home was broken into has been charged, it's really going to be a question that's up to a judge or a jury or to the court.
But the guy had a crossbow, so he's armed. So if he saw that and if he felt threatened, and understandably, most of us would, I would think, right? Why would a guy have a crossbow? He's not there for target shooting, right? So that would make sense, wouldn't it, though? It would be reasonable, would it? If he feared for his life, he saw the guy had a weapon, so to grab a kitchen knife or whatever to defend yourself, would that be normally considered reasonable by a judge or a jury?
So you have outlined some of the actual factors that are listed in the criminal code that the court will assess. For example, what was the nature of the threat? Were there any weapons used, and what kind of weapons were there? Other biographical factors, such as what is the size of the intruder opposed to the person defending themselves. Other things like the duration, how much force was. The key here is proportionality. Was the response to the threat proportionate? And I've been watching the news a lot about this and hearing what folks have to say. And one of the big things that comes up is when I'm afraid for my life or for my property and my family and my home and someone's intruding, I don't have time to get out my criminal code that I don't have a copy of.
Exactly.
Making this assessment, right? That's not natural. But the law and the courts don't expect people to go through this technical assessment on the spot. There is some recognition that everyone has a different subjective response to a threat or to danger if it happens to them. And so that is going to be taken into account in court in the analysis of whether their decision of how they defended themselves is going to be lawful.
After the break, there's more to come, including stories from southern Alberta. Welcome back. Here's a look at some stories from around our province. Members of the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees have ratified a new 4-year contract with the government. 71% of the 23,000 eligible members cast ballots, and 63% of those voted in favor of the mediated settlement. Union President Guy Smith says workers will get a 12% wage hike over 4 years, with some adjustments to the pay grid.
There were what we call, or the government called, called market adjustments, which attached higher pay to certain classifications. There was a number of other benefits, financial benefits that impacted everybody. So a good size of our membership, are making over 20% over 4 years, some even higher than that. There were some very good changes in the collective agreement beyond the direct wage settlement. And we were ready for a strike. I think it's really important to recognize our staff and our teams worked for months and months and months preparing for potential strike action. And as of before 4:30 yesterday, we didn't know whether that would be the case. This could be a very different press conference we're holding today, but we were prepared, and so were our members.
The deal will also see the province and union administer a new $11.4 million annual fund for recruitment and retention initiatives, with 4% increases to the fund guaranteed every year. However, the AUPE still must contend with one negotiation that seems to have hit a dead end. After negotiations soured between the town of Coaldale, Alberta, and their municipal employees, the town made the decision to issue a 72-hour lockout notice for their employees. In response, AUPE announced shortly after that they will subsequently hit the picket lines once the lockout comes into effect this weekend. This comes after a year-long process of attempts to negotiate a new contract. The town presented the union with a final offer, which includes a 17% wage increase over 4 years, but also included several benefit rollbacks. The union has described the offer as insultingly bad.
We've been seeing some peculiar things going on during bargaining that we don't typically see In particular, we've had an employer that is reaching out directly to our members instead of going through the duly elected negotiating team that the members have chosen to represent them at the bargaining table. If their offer truly was 17% over 4 years with no rollbacks, I think we would have a collective agreement. Unfortunately, a lot of their market adjustments just don't apply the way they're saying they would apply. And again, we get back to the issue of rollbacks. I mean, we're seeing rollbacks in overtime language. We're seeing rollbacks in how members are able to use their sick time and bank sick time. Some of the rollbacks just are things that we cannot entertain at all. Our negotiator has attempted to say, let's get back to the table, let's deal with these rollbacks, and then we can talk about increases, but it's been crickets from the other side.
The lockout came into effect on Saturday at 4 p.m. BCN did reach out to the town of Coaldale, but they did not respond by broadcast time. In a statement provided Wednesday, the town says contingency plans will be in place to keep essential operations in place. As kids headed back to school Tuesday in Alberta, the threat of a province-wide teacher strike loomed over their parents' heads. So, how are parents feeling about this? Tuesday morning, BCN spoke with parents and school officials in Lethbridge and asked them one key question. What's your plan B in case a strike happens? Here's what they had to say.
Not so much a concern, but it's kind of hard not knowing what's going to happen to prepare. And right now I actually just stay home with my kids. So for me, luckily it won't affect me, but I feel for the parents that work and don't have another option. So hopefully it doesn't happen.
Definitely brings a bit of uncertainty as we start the school year. Obviously hopeful that our year isn't disrupted too much as we start off. I guess we'll see what happens though.
There's no doubt. I think there is a lot of wonder, a lot of, that hope of not having to take that action, but also that acceptance that if that is what we do, then we'll follow whatever plans are possible.
Alberta teachers last went on strike back in 2002. The big issues then were familiar ones: large class sizes and wages. Access a Ride workers in Lethbridge have taken their first step toward a potential strike after bargaining reached an impasse. The Amalgamated Transit Union Local 987, which represents Access a Ride workers, said the move comes after months of exhausting negotiations with Lethbridge Transit. The president of the ATU, Travis Oberg, says Lethbridge Transit's unwillingness to withdraw concessionary proposals continues to be an obstacle.
We're not seeing the significant movement we need from the city, and therefore that's the process that we're moving forward with. We believe the city's got some concessionary proposals on the table that they've been unwilling to move away from. In addition to that, is we're looking to get some minimum standards for loading and unloading times set in our collective agreement, which provides safety for our operators and safety for the riders that use our system. In addition to that, we are also looking for a fair equity pay compensation that is in line with our transit operators collective agreement. The percentage to get us to that is not significant. There is some market adjustments that can address that, but we're only looking at $2 to $3 in difference in wages that we're trying to achieve to ensure that they get that fair compensation with. There's 45 accessoride employees under this collective agreement. Physically, if the dates all align, could be in a position prior to municipal elections, and we could be in a position to strike before that.
On the other side, the city of Lethbridge says they will continue to work towards a new collective agreement and are now awaiting dates for the ATU's mediator meetings so they can return to the bargaining table as soon as possible to reach a fair deal. The Alberta Sheriff's Safer Communities and Neighborhoods, or SCAN unit, shut down and boarded up a drug house in North Lethbridge on Wednesday. The property was subject to 55 visits from Lethbridge Police between January of 2024 and May of this year after numerous calls of reported assaults, disturbances, and suspected drug overdoses. Investigators were able to observe activity consistent with drug dealing and found used syringes in the alley behind the property. SCAN was able to obtain a court order to close the property at 1212 10th Avenue North for 90 days. The hope is that this will provide relief and safety for the surrounding neighborhood, which is in close proximity to St. Paul Elementary School.
A property like this being so close to a school presents an increased risk to the public and an increased risk to the students that are now, as of this week, going to school and have to walk by properties like this. And the information we had from complainants that they were genuinely fearful for their safety and the safety of people in this community. Complainants described a property that had a large amount of traffic to and from the property, people on foot, vehicles coming to the property. Complainants said they thought they observed drug use occurring on the property, as well as a high frequency of police activity and police response to the property. It's our hope that that 90-day closure breaks the cycle of violence and drug activity that was happening at this property, but it also gives the community a chance and a break from what was occurring here. Obviously, with 6 complainants on this property who are completely anonymous, this property had a pretty significant impact in this area and on the people that live here.
SCAN says communication with the owners and occupants of the property have helped them to take steps in seeking social support. SCAN will continue to monitor the property for an additional 2 years while the investigation continues. According to the World Metrics Library Statistics Report 2025, only about 50% of the world's population has access to a library in their community. That's why initiatives like Lethbridge Public Library's Membership Month in September matter, encouraging residents to sign up and get involved for free to explore what their library offers.
We really want to showcase what the library has this month. We have a whole bunch of crazy stuff in addition to books and videos and everything else. We have lots of learning and free access. One of the wonderful things about the library since I've been here, we've worked really hard to make the library accessible to everyone. And I think that's one of the great things that we have as a library in this society. In September, a couple cool things that are going on. Bookstop open at the Labour Ice Arena. We've got, the maker space, which is upstairs, and then that's things like you can use a 3D printer or a sewing machine, and it's really cool.
Yeah, so September 20th is the Word on the Street Festival here at the library. It's our big outdoor literary street fair where we will close off the parking lot and the streets around it here downtown at the main branch. And we will have food trucks, live music, an exhibitor marketplace, 7 stages running all day long with authors, illustrators, and presenters coming in from across Canada and locally here too. Workshop stage with some information and presentations about writing and cartooning and everything else. Also this year, it's the festival's 15th anniversary. There's 3 different things that you can do to help us celebrate our 15th anniversary this year.
According to the library manager, free membership has been in place since 2019. A local electric company is extending its long-term relationship with the Lethbridge Interfaith Food Bank. After contributing $100,000 over the past 5 years, Mikado Electric is continuing its guardianship with another 5-year, $100,000 commitment.
What's special with their guardianship is that they actually go out and do some legwork to find some really good deals to bring us food that we need to fill in the gaps for our clients' needs. Having that legwork done is super helpful because there's so much work to be done at the food bank. To have that work done for us saves us some time to do some of the other programs and services and making sure that all of our programs and operations are running really smoothly. So when Mikado Electric comes in and they give us, I can get you this, this, and this, and lets us know, gives us the option to pick the items that really will be of most value to our clients. Super, super helpful. Yeah.
Granger says the Mikado Electric commitment to the Guardians program in 2020 was the first of its kind for Interfaith. They hope it will inspire other groups to also make long-term commitments of support to any of the expenses the food bank carries from year to year. Well, the summer came and went, and now we are in back-to-school mode. While a possible teacher strike looms in Alberta, parental rights in our school system remains an ongoing concern. Up next, we hear from the Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union to hear more about it. And if you're watching us online, that full interview is available on our YouTube channel.